At this point, let's jump into the bigger picture charts and see how things are set up on the larger time frame. So we can see here on the S&P daily chart that the buy side has continued to be fairly dominant. We have established essentially a new trading range up over here, and now heading into the upcoming week, we're going to be watching to see if the buyers can hold ES near the upper edge of this range, and if they can do that and we continue to see broad market strength and upside momentum, then we can break out to yet another new all-time high. Short term, we have support at 71.5 to 73.5. Holding above that area would tell us that there's still potential for buyers to push the market higher, and a failure to hold 71.5 to 73.5 would bring the 62 to 64 support into play, and possibly even the 55.5 to 57.5. And those are still spots where buyers can be active on first test. If you take out the 62 to 64 and the 55.5 to 57.5, at that point the market could quite easily go down to the 25.49 high volume node, and probably even down towards the 39.25 to roughly 43.25 area, which marks the bottom of the balance area, and that would be larger time frame support where buyers could be active. So short term, if the buyers are going to maintain control, then ideally you want to see the market holding in the upper edge of the recent range, and definitely above 71.5 to 73.5. And as long as we're holding the upper part of the recent range, then there's still potential to go higher. This is still a very bullish market, but if we fail at 71 to 73.5, then that could open the door for testing those support areas below. And if you take out 62 to 64 and 55.5 to 57.5, at that point the short-term control could shift much more so to the sell side, and then we can go down towards 39.25 to 43 or 44.25, where buyers can step in, and that is really the larger time frame area of support that needs to hold if this bullish structure is going to remain intact. Now moving on to the Russell, we can see on the daily chart that it's now formed a new trading range up here, and it's kind of developed into this bull flag. And the ideal thing for the market to continue to be bullish would be to see a breakout type move or some accelerated movement to the top of the range, and then a breakout above 1516 to 1518 would serve as a bullish confirmation. On the downside, if you break below the 1482 to 1483 area, that could shift short-term control to the sell side and bring the breakout area down at 1451, 1452 into play, and maybe even around 1438.5. So if the buyers are going to continue to be in control, then you want to see the Russell holding above 1482. And failure to do so, followed by a breakdown below this area, would be a bearish signal, and that could drag the other markets lower as well. So for now, the Russell is really just developing a new balance, a new trading range up here. But going forward, if the buyers are really going to maintain that control and we're going to continue to be in a fairly bullish environment, at least short term, you want to see some upside coming into the Russell and taking out the 1516 to 1518 area. And then ahead of 1516, we have the current balance area high volume node at 1510.2. So that's also a level to keep in mind. So that is how the Russell is set up. Now let's move on to the Nasdaq. So NQ has been leading the other markets higher and making fresh all-time highs. You can see here on the 60-minute chart that even recently we got yet another breakout to new all-time highs, and now NQ has established another trading range up here. And within that trading range, we have the high volume node at 62.47 and the swing low at 62.36. So short term, we can use this 62.36 to 62.47 as an area of support. Failure to hold that area would bring the 61.92 half and the 62.02 quarter area into play, which is another spot where buyers can be active. And in the event that that zone fails, then the next spot, which is a more conservative area of support, is going to be down near the 61.15 to 61.30 zone. And then we have the big high volume node at 60.73. So for now, NQ is continuing to show a lot of bullishness, and as long as it's holding these short-term areas of support, buyers can continue to be dominant. And even if we don't continue to make new highs right away, it can just establish a new trading range up here and then eventually still head higher. So with Nasdaq trading at fresh all-time highs, we just have to take it day by day and see whether we are continuing to see that buying pressure and continued strength in that market to support a continuation to yet another fresh all-time high, and then a lack of strength could lead to some balancing up here, and then we have some bigger support down at the recent breakout area, 61.15 to 61.30, and the big HVN, 60.73. And then below that, you can see that we have this launching point around the 60.35 to 60.39 zone, which is also quite decent support. So that is how NQ is set up. Last but not least, let's take a look at crude oil. So in last week's video, I talked about how crude oil was now coming into this big balance area and trading range, which is an area of resistance. And even though crude oil was in a short-term bullish pattern, because it was now coming into resistance, we could get some balancing up here. And then the higher we push into this recent range, the better the resistance and higher the odds of sell side stepping in. So we saw that over the last week as crude oil found sellers first time up and kind of struggled over here. And then on Friday, we saw a break higher towards that 56.06 high volume node. And so far in the overnight session, the sellers have been more active in crude oil. So that bigger scenario really hasn't changed. We've seen some short-term strength in crude oil, but like I said last week, the higher you push into this big trading range and into the larger time frame resistance up here, the higher the probability that sellers are going to step in, and it could result in a pretty swift move right back down towards 53 to 54. So on the upside, this 56.06 high volume node is a good spot for sellers to be active, and that's what we're seeing so far. And then beyond that, we have decent resistance from 56.45 all the way up towards 57.65. So this entire 56 to roughly 57.5 is a big area of resistance, and it's unlikely that buyers are going to take it out on first test. Eventually, who knows what's going to happen, but at least short term into this upcoming week, it's more likely that sellers will be active around this 56 resistance, and in the event that we take this area out, there's still some decent resistance at 56.45. You have the middle of the balance around 56.83, and just overall a lot of rejection between 56.83 and 57.65. So this is a spot where we could see not just short-term rejection, but it's a spot where this upside move could completely fail for a move back down towards the 54.30 high volume node, which has developed over the last week, and then possibly even a move back down towards the 52.86 to roughly 53 area. So we just have to be mindful of this conflict between the short-term bias, which is bullish in crude, and the fact that it's running into this larger time frame resistance, which can really put a halt to this upside move. And then on the downside, we have support at 54.30 to 54.45. That's a spot where buyers can be active on first test. And then below that, we have support around 53.75 to 53.90, followed by the breakout area at 52.25 to 52.86. And that would still be a spot where buyers could be active on first test. So last week, you can see that there was a lot of friction over here and sellers were active. And now heading into the upcoming week, crude is trading at an even higher price, at even better resistance. So now we could actually see a bigger failure take place in crude oil. And that is definitely a warning sign for anyone initiating new longs as the market heads into this bigger area of resistance. So heading into the upcoming week, we'll be watching to see if sellers can really step in around this 56 area for a bigger failure and rejection, not just a bit of a downside move. So that is the main thing that we'll be watching for as crude tests this big area of resistance. So that is how the crude oil market is set up, and that is a wrap for tonight's video. I hope you all have a great week in the markets and good trading in the week ahead.